Hi, I'm Mandy Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington REALTORS Legal Hotline Lawyer. And this is another episode in our series regarding busting industry myths. And the myth we're focusing on today is this. When a seller is in a contract with a home sale contingent buyer, a Form 22B buyer. So seller has already entered a purchase and sale agreement with that Form 22B buyer. The myth says that seller cannot now lower the list price of their home or their property, and they cannot accept an offer from a bumping buyer if that bumping buyer's offer is also home sale contingent or also includes a Form 22B. That is the myth. That is wrong. Let me say the correct answer so that there's not confusion about what's the myth and what's actually correct. Here is what is correct. When a seller is subject to a transaction that already includes a home sale contingency, a Form 22B, so the property is now listed in the MLS, showing that the seller is looking for a bumping buyer because the seller's home is already tied up with a home sale contingent buyer. When that is the fact pattern, that seller may lower the price if they choose to do so in the MLS, showing a lower list price than what the home sale contingent buyer made an offer based on. And when the seller receives a second offer or a bumping offer, the seller can accept that offer even if the bumping buyer's offer includes its own home sale contingency or Form 22B contingency. Incidentally, it could also include a Form 22Q or a pending sale contingency. But the biggest myth out there is that if the seller's tied up with a 22B buyer, they can't then accept another 22B buyer as the bumping buyer. Not true. Any offer that seller is willing to accept, and accept is really the wrong word, any buyer, bumping buyer with whom seller is willing to enter a purchase agreement for the sale of seller's property. And the reason I backed off the word accept is because I want to make sure that if you're representing the seller and your buyer is already, your seller is already tied up with a home sale contingency 22B buyer, then remember that when your seller accepts a bumping offer or does business with a bumping buyer, that transaction between the seller and the bumping buyer must include a Form 39. That's the second buyer's addendum. If you truly let your seller accept without countering that second buyer or that bumping buyer's offer, then it's highly unlikely that that bumping buyer has included a Form 39 in their offer, which means that if your seller truly accepts without countering, then your seller will have accepted an offer from a second buyer, even though they're already tied up with the first buyer, and your seller will have sold their home twice. The reason I backed off that word accept a few minutes ago was because I want to make sure in your own mind, you remember that when your seller is tied up with a Form 22B home sale contingency buyer, that you as a listing broker remember your seller cannot truly accept a bumping buyer's offer, but they can counter a bumping buyer's offer on all the identical terms of the buyer's offer, but to also include the Form 39, the second buyer's addendum. That's the addendum that gives your seller the contractual right to terminate the transaction with that second buyer if the first buyer either satisfies or waives the home sale contingency. Form 39 is crucial to preventing your seller from having sold their home twice. But again, the point of this episode is to let you know that if the seller is tied up with a 22B buyer, the seller can do business with a bumping buyer, even if that bumping buyer's offer price is lower or their transaction includes a home sale contingency Form 22B of their own. If you have questions on this topic or any other, please visit warealtor.org, follow the links to the Legal Hotline and ask me a question. And if you'd like to hear more myths get busted, then find one of our classes called Busting Industry Myths, and I'll look forward to seeing you there. Thank you for being a Washington REALTORS member.